I'm Cny, and I'm a member of the 8-bit community. So today I wanted to do a little documentary and explain all that happened on the server and, the little nice details in around. Hi, I'm Cny, and I'm a member of the 8-bit community. Today I'm doing a nice little documentary about what actually happened with all the events on the server, since they were documented by Ham but not really into detail of what happened. I thought it'd be fun to create a nice entire video on my lore timeline and through interviews and information that I've gotten from other people of the server. So all the stuff that I'm about to talk about is pretty much my ideas mixed with a bunch of things from everyone else. And there's also information from headcanons that I'm making. So we'll get them. To start it off, we are going to talk about the people of 8-bit that, are kind of well known around here, just to get to know them. So we have Clubbo, who is the main person behind half of everything on this server, mostly because he's the dude who set it up and allowed us to play on this wonderful SMP. He does try to help everyone and wants everyone to have a good time. Good dude, good times. His lore persona, it's a little messed up, in all honesty. He joined the war, it eventually dropped out. Then he and Sashimi started an entire war that lasted nearly 5 months because of a rabbit. Good old Kushi died. Clubbo was convicted of being one of the 2 pranksters that attacked Ham's place and set off fireworks inside the White House. Lovely. Just Club being Club. He also worked with the Lectern for a good amount of time before the Lectern began to openly share his dislike towards Clubbo. And that's all I got for him. Doot Doot is a great person, caring, always there to lend a hand to anyone who needs it. They wanted to keep to themselves and just build on the SMP for fun. Then everything goes downhill after the pranksters attacked him. That's really where it all went downhill, in all honesty. Doot Doot stands by their belief and will defend their beliefs when necessary. Doot Doot, you're an amazing soul. Their lore persona is more off to the side and doesn't have the main stage energy, but did lead most of the server meetings. They also created a bunch of beautiful builds throughout the spawn area, and I do plan to talk about them in depth, so stay with us. Doot Doot was level-headed when it came to talking about the pranks and attacks that took place on the SMP. Doot Doot is one of those main characters without being the main characters. Him. Oh boy. He's been keeping everyone on their toes, keeping up an ARG while school. Fantastic. So, he's more of the main character who allied with the protagonist and antagonist. Man. My notes on his lore are incredibly long. Why? Because in lore he wanted to have connections and control everything, and have connections to those in power by, becoming friends with them, or by manipulation. What an honest man. He's called to be one of the more mysterious characters on. He's been called one of the more mysterious characters in 8-It, and is seen as the messenger of all the villains, which he really was. He was one of the 2 to finish the Potato War, and he spent a lot of his time building around his property to create an empire. Like Clubbo, he worked with the Lectern, not sure how long he worked for though. Oh my god, they were both killed by the Lectern. Oh, that's a story. Anyway, Ham has a lot on the go for his lore, being possessed, and what else that man does. Next we have Saichi. Saichi is a great mother. We have the whole Koi family kingdom. She's ready to help those who are wanting it. If she can benefit from it, the better. It'd be better. I believe there's some sleep deprivation and caffeination, but that's me throwing around terms. In lore, Saichi isn't one for either sides. She'd rather live a peaceful life and hang around her cats and flowers, but if she needs, she will be absolutely ready to take out any person who is hurting the Kois or close friends. She took it upon herself to help everyone feel better in the days after the Rabbit War by handing out blue to anyone she crossed paths with. This was lovely. I think a lot of people kept it close to their hearts. I think I have it in my under chest, in all honesty. That is all that needs to be said about Saiji, more or less. Pori. Cool guy. Porygons and Pokemon. Anyway, he's fun. He has some great building ambitions. In lore, he stands by the law, and what he feels is the right laws to follow. Pori was one of the very few people that didn't want to have power over others. It shouldn't be a shocker, but it really is by how many people there were on this SMP. Oh my god. Dang, we're great. He's willing to fight for the greater freedoms and fairness of others, and once again, a rare trait for this server. Good job, Pori. Reapster. Meep is a gentle soul wanting to have fun and create his own little universe in the world. He liked the sheep. Meep is also the kind who wouldn't start a fight, but he'd join in on whichever side he'd agreed with most. In lore, he joined later than most of us, and while he was there, he hopped on and joined the server in the major events and meetings. He also built a few shops of the color shop and a floating restaurant. Not much happened with Meep, and that is pretty incredible, so good job again. And then you have me, Cny. This is... oh, my notes say, this is a really cool guy. But nah, I'm cool with living underground and chilling. There's a point where there ain't much to say. I fought in a potato war against Club and Hambo. That one's going in a book somewhere. I was fought in a war against Clubbo and Ham. I'd rather not fight people unless it benefits me in the end. Wonder where I get that from. In lore, I didn't do too much since I spent most of my time clearing out chunks and working on the water plaza, or, farming mass amounts of potatoes. In the Rabbit War, I was labeled as the traitor, which I don't disagree with, but no. Alright, yeah, bam. And we move on to Robo Duck. Robo Duck and his everlasting aura. He's a great bane of mild chaos. Like, mild chaos. He was one of the 4 people that just grinded their lives out in 8-bit for like 2 months and then faded into the Shadow Realm. In lore, he would attend the White House meetings and was accused of being the Lectern. This led to him exiling Tutu when he became king. So yeah, he's also the king of the server. And I'll make a point about that later. We'll talk about a lot of things later. That's pretty much covers it. He was very wealthy, so woo! Next we have Aka, or Sashimi, which did cause a little chaos on the server. But other than that, he was really, really to himself, and would build bases far out away from others. He was the one who quote unquote killed Kushi, and then set off the many-month-long war. He also was the one who found the end portal frame, so that was cool. In lore, Sashimi would attend events that held importance to him. He probably stopped coming to meetings after club's shenanigans. Sashimi didn't do too much when I was on, so fun times. Ghosty, lovely bean. She built her morals on bias and loyalty to the cause, which is not what one would expect, but not surprised by that. She didn't do a lot to step on others' toes, which is kind of nice for this server. She just lived on her island and chilled with her turtles. In lore, she was a few that who could occasionally join for server meetings and events, and after the death of Kushi, she declared allegiance to Club for anything that he stood for. Yes, Ghosty Pog! And next we have Breadman. Breadman is the man who wanted chaos, and chaos he created. He joined later into the server as well and just grinded the living daylights out of this server, completely tipping the economy and simultaneously fixing it. That is a feat, and I don't think I will see that happen again. He was one of the top richer members of the SMP, but, Robo Duck's on there. He had his little moment with Emmanuel, and a wonderful plot. Ah, yes. Next we have the Lectern, who is the nice spooky man, mostly because of all his ominous figure in the corner of your eye. Terrifying. He wants power and control based completely on his own principles. As far as I know, the Lectern sat in a hole, wrote a book to people. I feel like that got the little flares for dramatic. I mean, deal or no deal. I don't know, I'm writing this at like 10:30. I'm dying inside. He did kill Club and Ham. Why? No one knows? Or at least the Lectern hasn't said anything about it. In lore, the Lectern covered the world in netherrack, junglewood, and fire. What a statement! The Lectern is a little vengeful spirit. Just a little. And our final character to talk about is Emmanuel. Honestly, this man is probably the worst for me to talk about, mostly because he is the only person who doesn't physically exist. So, I don't know what... I personally don't have an opinion on him. They don't like people, or the Lectern. He wiped my memory or something at one point. In lore, he's fine with pushing people out of the way to get to his goals and get all the power he can get, especially when he used pawns. And to help achieve his goals. He possessed Pori, bread, and ham, and in the end of the SMP, Mr. Mans decided that it'd be funky to have a nice fight with the gods. What a time! I remember nothing, and I will talk about this entirely later. So that leads us into talking about our builds. In the main area spawn, we have the lovely buildings and shops here made for everyone to enjoy and have a lovely time. The builds have stories, but many of them are not linked to lore. But I have dedicated time to hunting down information for all these. First on my list of builds is the iron shop. Why? I don't know, I just felt like it. But the history behind it is that Clubbo hired Dude and me to help transport villagers to, create the iron. And it was in return, we both got shares of the profits from the iron shop and iron itself. So that took me and Dude nearly 2 hours to bring villagers there. And Clubbo spent a long time building the actual, build to it. Dude was the one who built the walls around, built the shop walls, and capitalized on it. I'm not calling them out, but half my wealth came from this thing, so I can't say too much. So, best investment of my life, though. It is. The split profits between me, Dude, and Clubbo was incredible, because that means I didn't have to go mine for diamonds myself. Clubbo also created a wool farm, and also has animosity towards a specific wolf that killed his, final sheep that he needed. I think that the Lectern did attack this place by filling the chests with netherrack or arrows. Or maybe it was hose. I don't know, I think something happened here with the Lectern, so that's my notes on this, so we're doing great. The library was created by me, so me and Meep could sell food in the restaurant at the bottom of it. So at the very bottom of the library, I have a dog named Lizabury, which I find that absolutely hilarious, so great joke by me. All my transcripts from... Sorry, just reading this. All my transcripts from the White House meetings are here. As well as the Book of Potatoes. I'm not actually sure what I called that one, but, I love it. Then there's a copy of the Constitution, some copies of Lectern's Conversations from the Shrine, a copy of Ruminations, and I think a book from the Lectern. If not, I don't know. I think it was from the Scavenger Hunt, that book, but, I don't remember. It's been a bit. As I was building this, there was a specific spot in the basement that I couldn't build past because of spawn protection. So the hallway kind of goes down all detailed and then it just stops. I love that part of it. So, but since it stops, I just didn't continue to build back towards it. But I believe that the Lectern had their final diary room in there, where the final message from the Lectern was left, which is pretty much a 26 page long essay from the Lectern about the Lectern's problems. This man should be the second client at my therapy office. Do it! Do it, come on! What's the worst that's gonna happen? At the end of each entry, the Lectern signed it Genesis instead of the Lectern, so I think the server agreed that the Lectern was gender fluid or something like that. Other than the shrine, really nothing much happened down here. Now we have the pearl shop. Honestly, I built it because there were so many pearls in the end that it was just a hassle to deal with them, and throwing them over the edge caused me to lose my Yeezys, so I built the shop, get it over and done with, make it easy. And now it's gone. Woo! It was useless to everything. Anyway, the sign up there says, "This is for lore purposes, do not fret." What lore purposes? Why? Well, thanks to interviews, I learned that the Lectern blew it up to prove that they weren't scared to blow things up. Man, why? It was dry. It was a dry business, but I didn't think it was lighter fluid dry. The construction shop. It was Dude's little business venture as they were chilling on the SMP, and it helped develop the spawn area a little bit. A lot of bit. It was the main source of income and ideas. It was a source, not the source, but you know. Robo Duck hired Dude to build some shops around... hired Dude from the shop to build... There you go. To build a bunch of houses inside the castle. And Club later hired them for his redstone base. There wasn't much lore involved here, but it was a very nice build to have at spawn. The White House. I built the White House to hold meetings or whatever. I am terrible at proportions, and now the room will forever be too small and the table will never be equal, which is great. I love that. Oh, hey. Oh, the window got fixed. Oh, that's nice. That was broken for a long time. But the other one's broken. Oh my god, why are my windows getting broken? Fantastic. Anyways, I built it with the minimal amount of quartz I had at the time, and this is what you get. It was used to hold the server meetings, and this lore goes way back. In the first meeting, we decided that we'd take off our armor when meetings were held. You know, for respect. But in hindsight, that was a terrible idea. The first meeting was to talk about the first few attacks from the Lectern and the prank on Ham. Dude accused Robo Duck to be the prankster. Ham accused Clubbo. Nothing came of this first meeting. So the second meeting, we talked about the Lectern's pumpkin withers, the floating island, and the purpose of the banners that were being left around. Sashimi then accused Clubbo, not Ham, Clubbo, of being the main contributor to the pranks and attacks. And backing up her claims were screenshots of Clubbo confessing to being the one who pranked Ham. Club did ask for his accomplice not to be revealed, but after Clubbo heard about the screenshots, he realized that he was caught in a big situation. And he didn't want to lie to everyone, so he did the next best option. He pulled out fireworks from Ham's CNY event and began setting them off, killing Ham, me, Sashimi, and Pori. In the first interview I did with him, he stated, "They're amazing," when I asked him about using fireworks. Back to the story. After the shots, he pulled out an axe and off he went to kill. In my memories of this, Robo Duck smashed the window and jumped out. Apparently, he asked not to be killed and joined Club's side, but someone did break the window to escape while everyone else tried to run for the door, which has so much room for 7 people to fit through. Once again, hindsight's 2020. Should have made a larger building. Dude was the one who took the reveal really hard, and yet we decided to have a third meeting. Club said that he didn't want to join because he felt like he wasn't welcomed and it'd just be better. So we went in and began talking about the Lectern's attacks, the shrine, and Lectern's problems. So we were sitting when Doot Doot got a book saying what Club was going to do and to leave if they wished to be alive, and then the floor opened up after Doot Doot left. We were all hit with waves of fireworks. This killed me, Saichi, Ghosty, and him. Hey, 2 for 2. Aren't we glad we didn't have the life system set up yet? We eventually broke the floor and found Club's hiding spot where he had a shulker box filled of invisible potions. After Club turned the machine off, he ran out of the tunnel and took flight with an elytra, and managed to find a few monuments while fleeing. What a man! He said that he did it to become the villain in lore, and in lore prove himself to the Lectern. That was the history of the White House. It's probably the biggest event to happen on the server, mostly because we still talk about Club's fireworks even a year after it took place. Man, that is a lot. But guess what? There's more. Just kidding. The White House then fell into being unsafe, and we never used it for another meeting since. The greenhouse. The greenhouse was another build from Doot that was more of a location finding and a nice building to look at. And it, it was there for everyone. It was used for those who needed quick food or access to, a nice little place to survive. But it never really got the chance to be used before lore hit it and blue vines and shroomlights began covering it. These became known as the Gatorade vines. Oh my god, the names. The Lectern speaks through a Lectern. Gatorade vines are the color of blue Gatorade. Oh, ho, ho. When they first appeared and Doot found them, they were not happy and expressed their discontent, to which Pori and the Lectern offered to help clean up. After this, the greenhouse was always where the Gatorade vines would appear and attack. But this soon caused Doot Doot to express irritation, and they slowly shifted to the side of the greenhouse. Then bones and signs were added to the mix to create an even eerier scene as each attack grew only in size and expanded, around the outside of it. At least it was a nice build. It was nice and pretty. But oh boy. The shrine. The shrine was a little place where the Lectern first showed up. They would communicate to us by a Lectern. Doot Doot and Pori, or Doot Doot thought that it might have been Robo Duck. Doot Doot and someone else were the first ones to find it, by noticing a small piece of glass in the floor that led to a room underneath the greenhouse. That had netherrack, stripped logs, a Lectern, and a book. The book had someone claiming ownership of the one who was attacking with netherrack, fire, and jungle wood. This was used before the Lectern got their account set up, so this was the main way of communicating between them. And was the main concrete moment that helps the Lectern character develop. Doot Doot was the main one who kept up and checked the Lectern for messages. The main event with this place is on April Fool's, where the Lectern threatened that TNT was under someone's house, so me, him, and Doot Doot grabbed a composter, a piston, and a lever before checking every house for TNT. This is when Doot Doot revealed that they found a house and that appeared to be the property of the Lectern, and showed it to us. It was most certainly the Lectern's house, and that will be explained later as well. Leaving information for later. Isn't it amazing? Clubbo's house. This was the longest building Club had on the server, where he started off by disorganized storing his stuff. Hey, another one who's messy about organizing things at first. Welcome to the club. As he expanded and gathered more resources, he built the court section of his house, and behind that, his secret room, where he kept his potatoes from the potato war, and later potions and lava. Then he created a basement 4 automatic farms, like sugarcane and chickens, and the netherwood farm for potions, and a basement, which was just his caves leading off into whichever direction. The first time the house got lore was when Kushi was killed by Sashimi. But when Club and Pori were hanging around the area, they heard rabbit squeaks and eventually found Kushi very much alive underneath the pen. By that time, Club had already declared war against Sashimi, so, no takes backsies. The Lectern would fill the house with wood and netherrack, and one time completely flipped half his things upside down. The third SMP meeting was where the house got its record for being burned down constantly. After he got away, Ham went and lit it on fire. Then sometime after, the server lit it up again, I think. Apparently I'm wrong about that. So, maybe we burned it down 3 times, maybe we only burned it down once. I don't know, I don't care. I'll figure it out later in life. Then, once again, after the Kushi War, Bread burned and pillaged it. Well, it was talked about. It never took place, but the idea of trapping Clubbo using his stasis chamber was always in the air, but there was never a good moment to use it. A fun memory of the house is when me and Robo Duck filled his house with chickens to a point where the server was crashing constantly, and Clubbo couldn't even fly to his house to be able to stop it. So what happened is I noticed Robo Duck was feeding a few chickens, and then even more when I came back a second time, so eventually I joined in by getting seeds and eggs from my house, and over the course of an hour, the house was surrendered to the chickens. I somewhat laugh that we managed to crash it. I believe it was a total of 6 times before we decided the server and Clubbo had enough and began killing some of the chickens. And then at some point, Club felt he had to kill me to justify himself or something along those lines. And then in lore, I was just fearful of him and joined him to go up against basically gods. What a night! On the last few days of the SMP, Beppo showed up and scattered a bunch of shulker boxes around and just didn't remove them, so it's real estate. Genie's house. Or Genie's original house. This was my original house I used for the first few days on 8it. It was nice. Then I evicted myself and left it abandoned, where David joined in and repossessed it. And did most of what, is seen. Most of the caves, like that staircase, that was not me. I had the spiral staircase going all the way down. But there is a chest in the walls where I hid my valuables, but now I think it's just a junk chest. I don't remember the last time I checked on that junk chest. This was the place where I think got attacked. Yeah, got attacked and filled with the netherrack and wood, I think twice. And then the entire ravine was covered in the Lectern's junk that no one felt like cleaning it up. Kinda glad about that in the end. But guess what? When I was doing this, I wrote this down because I still thought it was there. But guess what? No, it isn't. Somebody removed it. Where did it go? I don't know. Why are the pumpkins still there? I don't know. Who did this? Why? The lighthouse. Dutu was the one who built it, and this is one of the builds that was there for a scenic view, but no one really used it. But it was a very nice piece to add to the shorelines of Spawn, and, it's nice and cute. The flower garden. The Garden of the Bay was one of my first builds on the SMP, and I built it as a peaceful place so that if there was going to be any wars, people could run and take refuge on this island. Nothing came about it though, so good for you. But I do think that there was a mini shrine underneath it, but I don't know what happened in the last days of the SMP because it's been covered up. Why? Alright, Spawn was the main area where things were built, and there were a lot of things that didn't have lore, but it'd be cruel to forget them. So, starting off, we have Pori's statue of Clubbo, built shortly after the White House, shortly before the White House's issues, because it was after them, but that Pori removed it, but eventually replaced it. So I'm just gonna stare at this and see. Okay, we're moving on. Hi, spider. And then we have Dude's little mushroom room, where this brought some of the kois to come sit down and chit-chat for a while. The kois really like mushrooms. It's not even funny. So, around Spawn, there are scattered little remains of a bunch of lecterns. And, you know, little things like Dude's friendship flowers. We also have Pori's scout shop, skeet scop. Yes, it's a skeet scop. And then when we have a chest full of discs, probably from M's Creeper Farm and whatever this book is. I have been so scared of this book. Why is it here? I don't know, but I think about it a lot. Probably more than I should. So I think Meep was wanting to build a map of Spawn, but it never really got finished. Anyways, onto the Spawn field, where thank you, lovely Dude, for building a decorative path and bridges. It really brought the atmosphere to Spawn even more. The shops were set up, and honestly, I don't think many people visited them. But, you know, it's fun. Everyone else lives like 6 miles away. Anyway, but we have shops like a flower shop. It's very nice. Very nice shop. We also have the chests from the Easter egg hunt, as well as the bubble chairs that Meep built in order to watch people spar in the field when nothing was there but a single block of cobblestone Clubbo placed, and no one could break because of the spawn protection. Near the White House, we have banners of the Lectern's many attacks, creating the sentence, "My notes say, deal or no deal." That is incorrect. I believe originally the "whoa, I'm" is supposed to say, "who am I?" So, you know, times have changed. What has happened to this server in the last little bit? I don't remember. And we cannot forget the massive 6-beacon centerpiece that Meppo created at the end of the SMP. Over here is my glass pane tower, which was extras from when I built the White House, and nearly killed Club a few times when he was flying around. I don't believe anyone actually died from it, which is good. And then we have the remnants of M's house, and some builds that Bread and Meppo made. Well, me, Ham, and Clubbo were racing back from somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Oh yes, the 2 iron ore. How could I forget the 2 iron ore blocks that I built because I had a lot of iron there. My only question, they're hollow now. Somebody took the iron inside, left the shells, and somebody else left a bunch of signs on the other one. Who did this? Who left the signs? That's what I'm curious about. Who left the signs? I've always been curious about that. Man. 8-bit was a funky little place, wasn't it? You could leave iron blocks and get questions like, haha, not falling for this, haha, what is this? Anyway, next we have, for our final destination, is Saichi's Museum. Although unfinished, it was a great idea behind it to hold the memories of 8-it and all the times and stories laced within. Going further on the outskirts of the spawn area, we have Dude's property. The recognizable yellow cottage in the woods was an amazing build, and they spread out their builds over a large property area and had so many intricate details into their land, creating a truly spectacular spectacle. Close enough. They had a main house with their basement with chests, mines, and farms, and nether portal. Upstairs we got Pringles the cat that took out half the SMP in the Hunger Games. Oh, I should do that again. Then there's the flower field, the beehive, and a bench in the center of it. That I remember I had to jump the fence every time I wanted to come back from accidentally getting on the wrong side of it. Fun times. Then there's the frog pond, adorable, with the little fairy room behind the waterfall. They set up large hanging flowers and statues of a chicken, bees, mushroom, snail, then the mushroom fountain with hanging torches, and lastly, in front of the house, there is a hill with a bench on top of it with flowers to watch the sunset. To the side of the cottage, Dude built themselves a miniature greenhouse, a horse stable, and a sheep farm with a cow farm underneath it. Another underground build is their hidden dog army. I believe, and it is true, their names all start with a D. To come to the back of the property, there's a small bee dome. Look at the bees. Aw, look at the little bees. They're so cute. Then there is a campfire with a bench. Man, this would be a great place to talk about lore for this server. Might do that. Then a tree swing, which is one of my favorite things about this little place. Dude spent a lot of their time building everything, and the flowers were always a way for people to mark their way back to spawn. The wishing well. The wishing well is near Dude's property. Dude built this as a way to steal riches from those who would come by it. They did this by having a sign that said, the more important or rare an item is, the more likely your wish is to come true. Apparently, only 3 people used it, and Dude's profits were a few first, is what I wrote. Were a few pieces of dirt and a piece of coal. I managed to fall down this well not once, but twice, and oh boy, it's a hassle to try and escape from. Dude did try to push us to use it, but sadly it didn't work out for them. But it is a very nice build. Thank you, Dude. Lake Koi. Lake Koi is part of Saichi's property, but at this point it deserves its own name. This build was made by Saichi, and I remember transporting all the fish from the little cove over there. Not much happened here, which is good. The amount of creepers that would walk around, just always there, was incomprehensible. It was always a pain to walk around over here, especially at night. Noom resides in his little boat on the lake, living his best life. Saichi's house. This is the main house that she lived in. We have her animals and friend, who I believe this is the third or second reincarnation of him. Sadly, I think the first one died on his way to the Christmas event. Rest in peace. Millie and Christopher still chill here. Pluto and Cobra reside at my place. I'm unsure of what else happened here, but I came to visit, and I just constantly jump across all the little things in the room. Nice little cottage with a lakeside view. Meep's property. Meep was one of the ones who joined later into the SMP, so there wasn't too much that happened with his properties. He built his house, his sheep. Meep existed here for a time. Then he moved into the mountain with ladder sheep. Wonderful. He built the color shop with a sheep pen and an entire field of flowers. He built this so that he could create concrete for his own builds and use it so that he could sell things and, just capitalize off of it. It's, probably a good thing to do. The shop did get blown up, so Then he built a melon farm where he learned it was, quote, an extremely ineffective food source, but a great way to trade with, or a great way to get emeralds from villagers. We also have his restaurant that I forgot to record in the first time I was recording through this. And I didn't feel like doing it again, so I just have the scene popped in here. But I did visit it, and it was a very nice restaurant. Very nice. The Christmas house. This was an idea that Club had for a holiday event for Ate It. He outsourced the building to Doot Doot, who did an amazing job on the house, the tree, the whole ambience. Truly wonderful. I believe I made the battle thing arena, but if I'm wrong, it's been a bit since I needed to remember what I built. Clubbo was the main one who gathered the supplies for the presents, with a little help from me, which is why y'all got happy holidays, flowers. The Christmas party was one of the events that was slightly underplanned, mostly because we all got confused of how to open presents, but in the end it all worked out. This is where Jamone concreted itself in history. While we were trying to sleep, a creeper wanted to join our sleepover, and after the door was left open, he took it as a nice little invitation, and blew up the house. Which was quickly reassembled to an under perfect amount. Sorry, Doot Doot. No one really knew who was the one to leave the door open. But, we don't worry about that. The Christmas house was used for directions and was a landmark for Pori's place. In the end, the Christmas house did serve its purpose, and it was a good, nice event for all of us to join in. The graveyard. A nice build further from the spawn area, but it's a nice little build from Doot Doot, when they got inspiration and built it. As far as the main few people are aware, only Club and Doot Doot used it. For Doot to make a grave for one of their dogs of the army, and Club used it to mark the gravesite of Kushi to express the true emotional pain that Kushi put on the server after we assumed he was dead. The abandoned village. It was just another build on the server. I don't know. I feel like this one has to be mentioned because this is really where I thought Sashimi resided. There's only a creeper farm that was built here by Sashimi. Not much happened here, but there you guys go. Oh, Robo Duck's property. His original house was the large field outside of Saichi's cottage. It was made way before Saichi created her house. He would grind when he played. At one point, he just had towers of materials like quartz, redstone, gold, iron lapis, just up there, where they were scary to look at, and really the ultimate flex of wealth that you're so confident to leave it out in the open. He created a villager farm and managed to unlock every enchantment book, and later, thank you Genie, named all the enchantments using lolscat as a language, and it really did not benefit anyone. Soon after Shioda joined, they moved into the grounds that are now the castle, where they deforested a huge plot of land to create a massive castle. The reason why was Robo Duck was, and had been trying, to become the king of the server. Robo Duck was unofficially declared one of the richest members of the SMP, so it was only fair to borrow a few things from him, like Clubbo robbing many stacks of wood to create chests. With the classic defense of his name got Rob in it, he hired Doot Doot to build a bunch of houses for his villagers that he was going to move. Have no idea why he didn't, but we move on. One of the funny memories was Club and him jumping off the mob farm trying to MLG, and Robot got his first bucket of lava after being on the server for months at that point. Great times. Robo Duck was determined to flex the heck out of us, and got the idea to kill not 1, not 4, but 24 withers to be able to make 24 beacons. Why? So he could have beacon effects across the entirety of his property. For the lore of the castle, it goes along the lines of Clubbo was the one who could allow Robo Duck being king, and Robo Duck would ask if he'd respond with "after the Rabbit War," which was the war that lasted for a good while before it actually happened. But eventually it happened, and Robo Duck was crowned king. And that day was a funky day. A bunch of people met outside the castle, waiting for the soon-to-be crowned king to log on. While waiting, Brad, Meppo, and Club learned that using an auto-clicker with a fishing rod equals a spider creature of inescapable strings being thrown everywhere, and legged the server from it. That was fear in a bottle. Eventually, Robo Duck showed up, and Clubbo declared him as king. He stood on top his throne to make his ascension speech to the aided peoples. Afterwards, he called to have a private conversation with Clubbo underneath the throne. Clubbo thought nothing about it, so went under. They both took off their armor, and Robo Duck stabbed Club. And guess what? This death was canon. We finally got the death system set up right before he died. This reason, I'm speculating, why Robo Duck did this was to prove to the server that he wasn't going to take anything from Clubbo. He wasn't going to be a puppet government. That he was strong and not to mess with him, to even the odds with Clubbo, or all of the above. This makes sense better if you read it, so open the transcripts. Have fun, guys. I don't know anyone who actually knows what was up or why he killed him. But it is what it is. And we voted on Clubbo's forgiveness for his crimes against the White House, which he was forgiven. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, after Robo Duck became king, or slightly before, he realized there was a lot of foot trafficking that was happening on his property, and decided that he was going to put a bunch of no trespassing signs with a bunch of traps at the entrance of his place. Apparently no one fell into them. But me. Twice. I have never been so mad at anyone. Or as disappointed in myself, but oh my god. I knew about them for a good while and would still walk around them to where I had to walk through the window that he had to get in and out of his house. But one day, it wasn't good enough, and I decided, door, and walked out and fell to my death. And then, I want to walk out the front doors instead of jumping over the walls, but a toasty, fiery death. I think Club went through and disarmed them at some point. I think it was slightly before Easter. So that was fun. But man, those things traumatized me. The next thing that His Majesty did was create a constitution and make Ham his viceroy. So the White House actually had one last hurrah as we all sat there and listened to Robo Duck's constitution, and me, Ham Jam, Pori, Saichi, and Club were the ones who signed that and agreed with what was said. And what was said, something about rights and wrongs, I don't remember, and I'm not going to find it or talk about it, so, But after the Constitution was signed, Robo Duck never was heard from again. He never came back on. He just left. He very, very rarely was active on Discord, but we will never know what happened to the king. On complete distances away, we have Ghosty's Island, the home to many, many turtles. This was used as a guide to getting places, especially Ham's place and the end portal. But I believe it saved Saichi on many occasions. There wasn't any major events that took place here, but I think that one of the Lectern's pranks was here. She set up a very intricate mining system and with multi-passageways, Overall, a very cool build that I feel like is a great way to show everyone has different vibes when building, and honestly, who doesn't want to chill with turtles? The Lectern's house. The Lectern made it. I think the most well-known thing about it is the giant map of all the houses. Dude was the one who found it while traveling with an elytra and saw it through unloaded chunks. But Club did build the pumpkin farm. The Lectern left their banners for the deal or no deal in chests, so after Doot found it, they'd regularly go visit it and see what was up with Lecty, including finding a few banners, a few this and that's, as well as a good few conversations between the Lectern and Clubbo. And we did talk about them at the council meetings. The conversations had been said to be intentionally placed out for the SMP to find in order to build lore or give more information. The major lore events that took place was that this was where the Lectern lived, and that Ham was imprisoned in the walls by the Lectern and subsequently freed by Clubbo, who blamed it on the vines. It was me and Clubbo using composters in order to find Ham. On the final days of the SMP, we went to look at the base or something, and the nether portal was turned into panes, and the creator was chilling there. Saichi put a flower and a sign as a final memento. Pori's mountain house. This was the first house that he lived in for a good while. It was a small settlement for himself. I was always so scared that he'd find my house by walking through the nether. As far as I believe, he only found it when one of my endermen took a block out of my wall, and he looked in and saw me farming and walking around. Fun times. There wasn't much lore here, I don't think, because nothing was really written about it. And, really all that's here is his house, a nice little secret base, a farm, pretty much the remnants of his old place before he moved. And I don't know what happened, but there was a endermite he named Mite. What did happen to him? I want to know. Genie House Part 2. This is my real house, which is buried in the mountain. So different from my first house in the side of a mountain. And boy, am I a hoarder. I have things absolutely everywhere. Like the amount of everything. The crops, the blocks, the animals. Oh my god. I know that I did look at the book that had Robo Duck's ideas as king, because we don't get enough content, and fun insight. I don't remember when I took note of it, but I did, so have fun. Sorry, Doot. I won the potato war after digging out a chunk to put 13 layers of farms. I've done enough about potatoes. Most of my time was spent inside this house. This is where my reversed bias comes in. I really don't like my builds because they're just cubes in a mountain. Anyway, we have the Enderman, because the Enderman would spawn in my chicken pit, then be pushed into the boat, so I started collecting them. The dogs, the animal pits. There were many chests of potatoes. No, they have not been moved since they were put in. No, these were not used for food. Why? Because I had a completely separate chest and farm for my food potatoes. Because I'm like that. The Mushroom Island. This was originally owned by Sashimi for the longest while. Clubbo was first to find it, and I believe he was told to leave immediately. Or Sashimi logged on while he was there and said leave or something like that. I found it a long while later after following some random tunnels trying to find the Nether Fortress. He built most of the things here except for the house with the beacons, the machines around it, and I believe Pori built the turtle farm. But I could be wrong. After a few months of the Rabbit War lingering, he decided to follow Clubbo's idea and build himself a secret base. So he sold the island to Pori. But according to Pori, it was abandoned and Pori just claimed it as his own and moved in. Then Bread and Meppo moved in with Pori. I think the only lore thing to happen here was the Lectern's prank for the scavenger hunt. Otherwise, it was another build that wasn't terribly involved with lore. And throughout the island, we have a bunch of builds from Pori, Meppo, and Bread, including the Porygon statue. And the beehives. Who could forget about the beehives? And we have Bread's house that he was in the middle of building. Not any lore to it, but it looks cool, especially with the shaders. So showing it would be perfect. Not showing it would be the crime. The Cny Pagoda. This is the New Year's event that was held. It was built by Ham Jam. The night was mostly us fighting each other in the ring, where Clubbo and Ham could have their rematch from the Christmas duel. This, once again, was a great holiday for the SMP. Nearing the end of the night, we stood on top of the house and took turns shooting a bow to hit the gong. Reapster was the first one to hit it, and the bell rang with fireworks shooting into the air. These are the same fireworks that Clubbo used later in the White House. Pori's treehouse. Another build by Pori. He built it as an outpost for those who needed it. It was one of my markers to get to the Coliseum. Not too much behind it. I think Doot fell down a hole somewhere outside. The Lectern left a mini Lectern here, and that's pretty much it for the treehouse. I never visited it. I think I only saw it like twice as I passed by. But overall, good build. Very homey. Next, Clubbo's secret redstone base. This lovely thing. After Club declared war on Sashimi, he made a joke that he wanted to move all his stuff out of his house so that we couldn't steal it or burn it. So that ignites the beginning of the months-long build, I mean to say. Which, in the end, turned out to be a great build. He knew what he wanted in there, an elytra launcher so that when he died he could fly away quicker, food rooms, a kitchen, bedroom, all the fancy things. But in order to actually build the base to the degree that he wanted, he had to hire people. So first he hired Shirada, who built the bedroom, and Ghosty, who built most of the entrance areas and a few other areas. They both eventually dropped off and stopped showing up on the SMP. Then it was Doot who built the living and pool area and a bunch of other areas throughout the mansion. And then he hired me to go gather things for the sorting system, and Pori for a few other materials, or just allowed Pori to live there. One of the main things that I remember about building this is that me, Doot, and Ghosty all got together with Clubbo to build the farms room, which I think is really cool. This build probably was probably the biggest team effort and took the longest. Clubbo was having his fun with the redstone and created original designs for it, like the XP dropper and a bunch of the doors. He also said that Saichi probably found it while it was in the process of being built by seeing it through the unloaded ground. Think that this is probably the funnest build to walk around. There's always something to do and look at. Originally, before I got hired, me and Ham were wanting to track it down for some reason by using maps. We never got around to do it, so then I got hired, so really, I don't know. What's the point of finding something that you already know? But overall, it was a great build, and Sadly, I don't have enough things to talk about to overlay everything to look at it. The Coliseum. I built this one and have zero respect for it. Why? I don't really know. I just don't like it. I made it in the absolute middle of nowhere, and it is terrible to actually find, and it's just a painful time. But no, Mr. Lectern couldn't let it die and had to hide a hint all the way over here. For the record, it's on the complete opposite side of spawn, probably the same distance from spawn to Ham's land as well. But, you know, I'm ranting now, so I'm just gonna move on to its lore purposes. Which is that we had to walk all the way over here to find a book and a banner just to walk all the way back. It was so useless and completely pointless. I'm going to stop now. Thank you. Sashimi's secret house. After the Mushroom Island was found and everyone knew where it was, he eventually left it and moved into the Acacia biome and built himself another base, where he resided till the end of the server, I believe. But he set up his own little community with the village, creating a chicken farm, an iron farm, a mob grinder, and what looks to be like an early villager hall, and a sheep farm. Then his house, which is a very nice building style. Club once again found it by accident. This led Sashimi to remove the lodestone block that Club snagged a compass for. So in response, Club made another lodestone compass and buried it right underneath the front door. This house had zero lore things to it. Most of the SMP had no idea where it was. And in the basement, we've got the potion making area and another lovely bee tree. There were only 2 bee trees built on this server. Both were by Sashimi. And then there's a few unfinished areas that I can only assume that he was going to expand before 8-bit closed down. The Water Plaza. I built the Water Plaza for a vacation resort, but never really talked about it and it faded out of my mind. The amount of sand I had to cook was ridiculous. Not much happened. I built it and there were a few rooms, a farm, and a racetrack for the bone horses to race around. But that ends up suffocating a bunch of people, so we don't use it. There's also a skute farm, and that's how this place ran. Ah, yes, the downfall of Genie's integrity, as I had to go through Robo Duck to get the Heart of the Sea, and that's where I gave him an IOU coupon. This is important later. Honestly, I'm really proud of this build. Everything else I've made I'm not a fan of, so into the lore aspect of the lovely Water Plaza. This is where we held our SMP council meetings, because really no one knew where this was or how to get to it. The council consisted of Ham, Doot Doot, and me. We had little conversations about recent events, our thoughts and theories, and just shared knowledge about what was happening. This is where we got the idea of arresting we don't want to arrest Ham, arresting Clubbo at the Rabbit War. In our final meeting, we went into a mineshaft because, of course we did. And in lore, we ran into Breadman, eavesdropping, and good old Emmanuel mind-wiped us 3. Otherwise, decent times here on the Water Plaza. Ooh-wee. Ham space. In the beginning of the SMP, Ham wanted to get away from everyone and create his empire powered by potatoes. He found the village and worked his way into the mountain. There was a little cliff here that had all his things, and a wall of lava. Can't forget that death of mine. Club first found it... I think Club first found it by accident and then was shown it by Saichi. Then Ham invited him over. I asked Club to show me where it was. I think at that point I visited... Club was looking for Ham's actual house, and not just like the area. I placed a bunch of signs around and questioning if it was there. I remember I'd take a ridiculous amount of poppies from the iron shop and plant them all over the place. I think this was the reason why Ham removed all the dirted areas. Fair, but like, no. When I got bored, I'd head over to Ham's base and see what's up, mostly building random things out of dirt, and built an entire dragon statue. Think it was the same night that Lectern and Club pranked him. Think we called him the prankster till the shrine showed up, in all honesty. But the memorable thing about this prank was the noise machine and the composters being turned into crafting tables. After that, Ham worked on expanding his empire and growing potatoes, and flat out dismantled a mountain. This is one of the times I dropped by and offered to help. This is where I got my first diamond pickaxe. I really did not get much resources for myself. Welcome to How to Scam Your Friends, people. At some point after Ham had built the villager thing, he began to take apart the original potato farm and create the huge room. He called a meeting with Clubbo while it wasn't completely done yet. When Club came, Ham took off his armor to show that there was no ill feelings. Ham did finish the underground room and was looking for a name. So I think I made the joke about calling it Earl after one of my Endermen, and apparently it stuck. And it was called the Earl. It's really a sight to see. The walls, the colors, the details. It was incredible. Club has even said that Ham had gone all out with it. While the Lectern was having his fun around the SMP, he and Ham would have friendly chats. The main one was that the Lectern wanted to set up a meeting with the SMP. The White House was not the place to be at, so the Lectern got Ham to build the Earl to fit the people of Aidit, including extended seats for Ham himself, His Majesty Robo Duck, the Lectern, and the Minutes Keeper, me. What happened was the Lectern came, said a few things, then we got on a long scavenger hunt, so more information on that later. Ham also had a conversation with the Lectern in the Earl when the Lectern turned and killed him. Not sure what life Ham was on, but it took one off of the total. Before this, Ham created the massive potato farm in hopes of winning. And I cannot express the fear that I got when I learned that he was willing to farm this thing multiple times in order to win. And I was so sure of it too. Sorry, Ham. Time's tricky. Then we have Saichi's little alcove. Near the end of the SMP, she moved herself over and was living in and around everything. Where we had the lovely little cats being surrounded and the nice horses and stables that Saichi built. Oh yes, Ham was trying to create a raid circle, and at some point I placed a sign. So, meet Walza. This was the best thing I've done on the SMP. I also placed poppy pogs somewhere in the caves. That's the stories behind the builds. Now, what's the point of talking about Aidit without mentioning the wars and the stories that traveled around it? So, now sit and let's look at some of the battlefields and their stories. So first we have the Potato War. This was the war that lasted 5 months, from late November to the 12th of March. It was started when I got a few potatoes and began to compete against Ham and his idea of a potato empire. So I began to build down in my base and create a massive farm to create the most potatoes. Clubbo joined in the war as well. He created a floating island of potatoes off of spawn. He built it up to 4 layers, then dirt became hard to find. Ham had a little automatic farm in the original area of the Earl, where a bunch of hoppers sent them into chests. I think his original idea was to mine out the entire mountain and just have layers and layers of farms. Clubbo said that if I got to 1,000,000 potatoes that he'd just flat out drop of the war. So soon enough, when? I can't remember. But I got to 1,000,000 potatoes, and it was shortly after that where Club left the war, mostly because to farm potatoes took a lot of time, which he did not have. So me and Ham were facing off in the race, and I think after I got 1,000,000, I just kind of stopped farming potatoes for a few months. Yeah, I think it was most of January where I just didn't farm. Ham and Clubbo were also using the potatoes to trade with villagers, more so Clubbo, till Ham learned about the iron trade. So Club got to keep those 25,000 potatoes, and halfway through February, me and Ham decided that this war needed to end sooner than later, so we decided March 12th was going to be the end of the war. In the last few weeks was when I learned about the fortune hoe and the amount of potatoes you can get using it. The entire time I was farming with a potato in one hand and a shield in the other. Ham over these weeks began to build a base, a humongous 30 by 30 or so square field of pure farmland, but sadly time was not on his side, and he farmed it as many times as he could. On March 12th, Clubbo offered to count the potatoes we each had. The total score was Clubbo is in third with 25,020 potatoes. Ham scored second with 313,803 potatoes, and me in first with 1,708,773 potatoes. This was really fun. This was a really fun thing that I got to do, and I will not be able to do another one anytime soon, because I've learned that I kind of like sleep. And I don't wish to lose my title as Potato Queen. I left every single potato I got in the chest and put them in, and after they were farmed, they have not been touched since. Ham put his potatoes in what he called the potato tower, where it was a bunch of chests filled with potatoes. I don't think he took them out either. Clubbo kept his potatoes in his back storage space, but after an incident, they were offered to the void and were never seen from since. Good game, everyone. The Rabbit or Pet War. What I call the Rabbit War is a battle between Clubbo and Sashimi over the presumed death of Kushi. It was months after Clubbo declared war on Sashimi, but finally, after both of them found new homes to hide their things, the war was decided to be started. The teams were shuffled, more or less, and that has to be brought up every time I ask about it. Leading up to the battle, I asked if I could set up the battlefield. I had a big vision of being able to run and hide in the tunnels and having sky battles. The very night before the war, I was chilling on the server, getting shields and whatnot set up, when Robo Duck and Ham were online. Ham left for a bit, so Robo Duck inquired about hiring me to be a hitman and a traitor. I did not want to do this, so he used the IOU, and if I refused, I'd have to give him another IOU, and then he'd use that one to get me to kill Clubbo. It was a sour situation, and he thought that using fireworks would be a great sense of irony. So he created a bunch of fireworks and helped creating 3 OP crossbows. That night I was physically shaking and wished never to do anything like that again. Thank you, Ate It. So the war began, and Sashimi's team consisted of him, Robo Duck, Breadman, and Meppo, who pretty much are all the PvP gods, going up against Clubbo's team called the Kushi Fighters, with me, Ham, Clubbo, Ghosty, Saichi, and Pori. We set up our little base in Pori's hidden base, which is underneath, or like right outside my house, which was a very intricate way of hiding it, including lava as an entrance, and I had no clue about it for the longest time. Doot Doot opted to be a spectator to watch the battle go down. And go down it did. After the battle started, bows and everything were flying and going. In my little bunker I created, I had stasis chambers set up. Little did I know that Saichi was going to be chilling in the bunker for the battle. So I summoned Club, placed obsidian in the door, and started shooting fireworks. I cannot stress how bad my hands were shaking. This was one of the things I never talked about, but this battle was really the one that's made me uncomfy with myself. So I was subsequently stabbed by Saichi, and not knowing what else to do, I went back and tried again, where Saichi killed me again, and eliminated me from the war. So I left to join Sashimi's VC. By that point, Ghosty and Pori were eliminated. Ham was very close to dying as well. While Clubbo was trying to figuring out what to do in this losing war. So I joined, and only remember hearing Meppo and Breadman cheering to themselves as they chased people. Robo Duck and Sashimi were quieter. They said a few things, but I can't remember. But after Ham fell, it was only Clubbo. They were constantly trying to figure out where he was. Clubbo died after being chased in the sky and ground by the entire team of people. After Ham created a cobblestone tower where we all piled into, and Ham announced that what the council talked about. Clubbo was under arrest for treason or whatever against the server. Clubbo, who was shocked to hear about this, broke a wall, punched someone, and Trident pearled out of there. Ham, in close Elytra pursuit, eventually lost him, and Clubbo traveled around the world again. Not sure if we burned his house this time, but I know that Breadman took it down. Clubbo said that this was supposed to avenge Kushi, but their name went down in vain, in theory. And that was what happened during the Rabbit War. I only have slight memories of fear and panic, but probably so does most of the Kushi fighters. Sashimi's side probably had a great sleep that night. So quick background on Emmanuel and the Lectern. I don't give too much of an explanation about these two at the beginning. So for a few things that are important to understand about these two. The Lectern is a mysterious entity that showed up after creating a shrine underneath the greenhouse, and several attacks and pranks. At this point, I don't know what differentiated what was a prank and what was an attack on this server. But the account was called the_Lectern, and they joined the game, and the fun began. I'm not sure what really happened when he was on, but he and Ham would talk, and, he'd come do things, I guess. The Lectern would leave books and things at their house. Clubbo said this was intentionally left out, which makes sense. But wouldn't it have been funny? Emmanuel is the enemy of the Lectern. Emmanuel holds power over the SMP and resides inside the Earth. He's supposed to stop the Lectern from either going home or getting power. Emmanuel is the official name given to the Vines and the corrupted players. David was supposed to play the role of him for the final battle, but was away for it. So as the Lectern became more noticed and around on the server, Emmanuel was getting power to fight him. A few nights after the final battle, the Lectern left to go back to their home, with Ham as the only witness. That was the end of the Lectern and Emmanuel. Cool, now on to the absolute chaotic thing I have to write about. The Lectern meeting and scavenger hunt. The title does not do justice for what happened. The Lectern called us for a meeting in the Earl, and was almost an hour of us running around Ham's place while waiting for Clubbo to show up and join us, and until the Lectern said, let's just get the meeting started. Eventually the Lectern showed up and told us to start without Clubbo. Oh, little did we know why. We all got into our seats. Bread managed to catch on fire. After a small little welcome speech from the Lectern, he sent us a video of him putting Clubbo in an obsidian cell. When we finished watching, the Lectern walked up to Ham and gave him the first hint to the server-wide scavenger hunt, with hints all the way to the treehouse, to the Garden of the Bay, Club's house, the Redstone area of the firework, Death Trap, into the Lectern's house, back to Ham's place, to Robo Duck's castle, the Mushroom Island, the Coliseum, and my house. All over the place. Until the hints led us to a desert temple where the floor dropped open to a maze was set before us. We all ran in different directions and fell into 2 traps of I don't know how many there were, but eventually we made it out of the maze to see a long corridor with the Lectern standing there with Clubbo inside a box. But in order to get to him, we had to do a parkour course, and the pain that this caused was unfathomable. Took like an hour to fully complete it with all of us. Pori was the first, followed by Ham and Breadman, eventually me and Doot Doot, before they crashed, got there, and Meppo spread-bridged with ancient debris. After we walked into the room, the banners that the Lectern was placing around the world spelt a deal or no deal. We read that it was a sacrifice between Clubbo or the server, so the Lectern set us aside, and for 17 minutes we discussed whether we should let Clubbo live or die. In the end, it was me, Pori, Ham, and Doot who were for Clubbo being sacrificed, and Bread and Meppo who wanted to keep him alive. One of the points on why was that we didn't know what the Lectern wanted to do with the SMP, and threatened with a more destructive idea. As well, Robo Duck was not there, and the server was technically under his control, and we had no right to give it over without consulting him. As we were deciding, Clubbo made pleas for his life, and that was that the Lectern wouldn't be that bad. After the votes were placed, Clubbo fell through the floor and was killed with fireworks. Irony at its finest, I guess. And in an interview I did with Clubbo, he talked about what happened and this and that, and during it. But I really don't feel like explaining the lore perspectives when I throw out that idea. Anyway, Club did say that he was the one who created the death trap for himself, and the basic outline was the Lectern's main way of showing power. The Earl's meeting. It'd be a lot of information to place in Ham's property section, so I've just written a little bit more on the Earl specifically. Ham, I have no idea why he made the Earl. I think it was just to build something for the place. Before it looked like this. It was a stone with a small staircase to get up and around the villagers, and a small enchanting room at the bottom. Ham then continued to expand and build the Earl until he got the crimson and warped spiral pattern on the walls. The ground filled in with lava. I think the ceiling was also was nearing being done at the time. After it was mostly fleshed out and built, Ham called for a private meeting with Clubbo, who was a little wary to go since the last time they met was at the Rabbit War, and that went splendidly. So Clubbo went, and they had a nice chat about Ham being done with hunting him down and Club's arrest, and at some point near the end of the SMP, the Lectern asked to have a meeting, and Ham agreed to help set it up. He asked the Lectern if he had a place to hold the meeting in mind, and offered to build one. So he was surprised when the Lectern walked down into the Earl and said, "Here's good." Apparently, Ham hadn't been down there for a while since there was a pumpkin wither and a pumpkin chain warp block thing as well. The Lectern asked to have the thing be kept, and Ham turned it into the chandelier. So, a week before the meeting was supposed to occur, Ham was working hard to finish seats and banners for the server. A few of the banners were lost to the void as well. After the scavenger hunt, Clubbo and Ham had a second meeting, Ham explaining his memory issues thanks to Emmanuel, and Club explaining irritation with the server about killing him. And the final thing that I'm aware of happening here was Ham and the Lectern's meeting, where the Lectern's asked to have a meeting with Ham and killed him in the end. He used his lightning and surprised Ham when he came at him. I believe that Ham's stuff got yanked by lightning at some point, and that's the Earl for you. The final battle. This is the last battle to happen on the on the server. So pretty much Emmanuel corrupted Pori, Bread, and Ham, and wasn't very happy with Lecty. So to war we went. Emmanuel did this by writing an ultimatum, pretty much stating that he was the beholder and had duties to do, that he needed to remove the Lectern or kill him very, very slowly, and that he'd wipe the server of all players, and pretty much get ready for war. Ate it. Club and Ham agreed to get the Lectern on Clubbo's side to go against the incarnation of Emmanuel. So I want you to join the SMP army banners, and were posted to the Discord, and me and Ghosty offered to join Clubbo and the Lectern in battle. But sadly, Ghosty was unable to make it, so the army of 3 rolled up to the massive bedrock fortress Ham and Pori made in an hour. So we began scaling the walls and eventually got inside and began to push the corrupted trio back. At this point, Pori got a good hit on me and killed me. I have no memory of anything that happened this day. I can barely remember I barely remember fire, so this really is just what I've heard from everyone else, and the truth is unknown to me. But after Pori killed me, the trio went to summon a body for Emmanuel, but the body was not there. So Ham took the role of being Emmanuel's puppet. Since I died, I don't think I wanted to continue to fight, or was scared, or something along those lines. But I didn't go up for the Emmanuel and Lectern brawl, so poor Clubbo was running and dodging Pori and Breadman. Emmanuel had a fireball launcher and a sharp 10 sword. Meanwhile, the Lectern had lightning and an axe. While the fight was happening, the Lectern took attention off of possessed Ham and went after killing Breadman and Pori, unsuccessfully. Why? I think it's been concluded that it was just to kill each of the members. As the Lectern went after Breadman, Emmanuel went after Clubbo. Eventually, Ham was killed and respawned free from Emmanuel. Pori and Bread were also freed from the control. As Ham was trying to do a nice lore, thank you, and hey, you freed me spiel, the Lectern walked up to Pori and killed him. So, yeah. If he was trying to go get all the members, Breadman out-parkoured a deity. After Emmanuel's death, he crawled back into the earth, or something dramatic like that. Then the Lectern vanished from the server. Happy times. All is well. And Ham went into retirement. Final remarks. Man, this took me a while. But there we go. I did it. We have everything nice about 8-it. Woo! Hopefully this is coming out near the end of near the start of 16-bit, or, around that time. Can't wait to make another one of these next time. Man, I'm a little tired. But hey, that's how it goes. Thanks for enjoying, and that's the story of 8-it.